Hello, my name is Steve Mullins, certified microbial consultant, and welcome to my channel, Health and Safety. Now, the title of this video is Worse Than Toxic Black Mold, This Can Kill You. And we're talking about specifically in California. That's where we're emanating from. But what I say is generally going to apply to anywhere you live. Now, I first need to make clear that I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a medical professional. So any statements made regarding law or potential medical conditions are simply for informational purposes only and are a result of my experience in the industry and from the information I have received from other authorities. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about what the basics of the toxic black mold are and where it came from and why that is the case, why people may fear it. And then we're going to talk about what is worse than the toxic black mold that can indeed kill the average person. Now, back in the early 90s, there was an event that took place in the state of Ohio that involved the death of several foster children that were living in an unsanitary home where black mold was involved in the death of those children. Now, the name of this mold is called Stachybotrys. Now, that's the name of a genus or group of molds, if you will, and not all in that group are considered harmful to people, but some of them are. And hence it got the name, or nickname I should say, toxic black mold, because it was black in color and was present at the time of the death of these children. Now, some of these Stachybotrys species, and many other molds too, will produce what are called mycotoxins. And in many cases, these are on the outside of the mold spores that grow the mold, or they may be produced in some other fashion. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the average person will inhale these mold spores, whether it be Stachybotrys or others, on a daily basis, and they will never even know it because our bodies will dispose of them and process them on a daily basis. And so the reason is because Stachybotrys grows in the natural environment outside. And so when we're outside, guess what? We breathe in some of those mold spores of the toxic black mold variety that people fear. Now, the problem comes up is that when we breathe in too many of these spores at one time, especially if they may have mycotoxins attached to them, that can cause us problems. It's much like if you have a sink or, say, a garbage disposal in your kitchen where it's overloaded with too much stuff at one time, it's simply not going to work properly. Likewise, too many mold spores, whether it be Stachybotrys or many others, can overwhelm the alveoli in our lungs and basically cause a host of issues as a result of that. Case in point is, on at least one of the inspections I've done in the past, where I suspected or knew there was apparent mold present, within about 2 minutes, I got a nice headache because I did not have my mask, which had a HEPA filter on it, to filter those out. I went back out to my car, got the mask, put it on, and I was fine. So you can have reactions to very high concentration of mold spores in a short period of time. And the point I just mentioned was that after I looked at the air samples I took in the area that I was inspecting, there was indeed high concentrations of mold spores, which would cause me a little bit of a reaction at that point. But generally speaking, most people that have sensitivities or should I say mold sicknesses or mold conditions usually develop over a period of time because of being exposed repeatedly to a particular type or types of mold at perhaps higher levels of concentration over a period of time. Now, that's not to minimize in any way potentially serious mold sicknesses that people do get as a result of that. That just simply is how it works in most cases. But your doctor, of course, is the best person to consult on that. Now, that's the basics of the black mold situation that people have become familiar with and heard about when you say toxic black mold. Now, let's talk about what is worse than toxic black mold that can indeed kill the average person. Now, I'm first going to talk a little bit about how mold starts to grow because it relates to this other thing that is worse than toxic black mold. Now, generally, mold will start growing within 1 to 2 days of getting a water source. whether it be a leak or whatever the case may be. And so that starts within 24 to 48 hours, depending on which one of the 5.1 million species of mold spores happen to be present at the time. Now, the reason is because let's say you have, for example, a leak that has started in your house, in your home, say in the bathroom, under the sink, inside the wall, where the leak is going drip, drip, drip. And so there's mold spores that are present there from when the house was built many years ago. And they'll stay resilient for hundreds, if not thousands of years. All you have to do is add water and have the right temperature and other conditions, and they start to grow. And so that's what happens inside of a home once you get a water source. But what a lot of people don't realize is that after the 1 to 2 days of mold start to growing after getting a water source, after 3 to 5 days of getting a water source, bad bacteria starts to grow. And that's what we call at that point category 2 water or gray water, due to bad bacteria starting to grow at that point. Now, the industry calls that category 2 or gray water. Now, let me digress and tell you that category 1 water is what they call clean water, such as what may come out of your tap. Again, category 2 is gray water, but then in as little as 2 days more after that initial 3 to 5 day window of initial moisture being present and bacteria starting to grow, it can degrade into what's called category 3 water or black water due to more acute, abundant, and dangerous bacteria growth along with the pathogens that go with it. And to put this in the proper context, category 3 water happens to be the same category that comes out of your toilet every time you flush it. That's some serious stuff. So that's why it is so potentially dangerous to us when water is just sitting somewhere in your home inside of a wall somewhere, because in as little as about a week, it can become what we call category 3 water or black water, and it's the same category as what comes out of your toilet because of the more abundant, acute, and dangerous bacteria growth along with the pathogens. And at that point, your family can be exposed to these bacteria along with the mold growth that's already happening, and certainly can affect your family adversely. And again, not to scare anybody, but yes, it can kill the average person. Now, moving on, what is one way to find out if you have this kind of situation in your house? Quite simply, you need to have an inspector come in, a certified professional, that can inspect for potential moisture and mold issues in the home. Now, keep in mind that, and I will make this one point, that if they do find moisture somewhere in the home higher than what it should be inside your home, you will have mold and you will have bacteria growth whether you see it or not. It's a scientific fact, because by the time an inspector gets there, it's likely been there for at least a week, and so you're already at that category 3 water stage, even if you don't see anything growing visibly. Now, it's important to get the right inspector. Now, I said do an inspection for potential moisture and mold issues. Now, that would not mean hiring someone that has a certified home inspector certificate or even a master home inspector certificate, because that's a different animal. They're not certified or trained or qualified to do inspections for moisture or mold. They just simply don't have the training or certification for it. I usually recommend to get someone that has a certification of a certified microbial consultant like myself, as it is a top credential in the, I'll say, water damage or mold industry for evaluating mold or microbial or bacterial growth, or that of a certified industrial hygienist or a CIH, as both of them together are the two top credentials in the industry for evaluating these kind of situations, and will give you the best recommendations possible for handling it. And just to give you a little background about an industrial hygienist, they're certified to handle the broad area of occupational health and safety, because that's what industrial hygiene is, from which industrial hygienist is taken. That means occupational health and safety, and of which microbial growth or mold evaluations is a part of. where the certified microbial consultant is narrowed or specialized just to the microbial growth or bacteria and mold growth evaluations. And so just to give you a little background about those certifications, so it's important that you get the right inspector for the job. I also say this because there are a couple of home inspector companies that will advertise they do mold analysis or mold sampling. And that's a little bit of a misleading and misdirected information, if you will, because these companies that I've looked into that say they do this don't have any training or certification to evaluate mold or moisture issues. A lot of it is driven by the fact that while they're there inspecting a house, why don't we charge to take mold samples and send them to a lab and let the lab do the analysis? Well, the problem is the lab will analyze what samples they took and come up with a report that says what's there. But that's not a proper evaluation of mold samples because it needs to be done in context of an inspection for potential moisture mold issues, of which the certified home inspector or master inspector are not qualified to do. So I'm just giving you that little bit of information so you can differentiate that and ask them the due diligent questions about what their credentials actually are and what they mean. It's a little bit of a pet peeve with me when I don't like people just charging for something that they're not really qualified to do. Now, let's say you hire someone to do this inspection and they come back and find out, yes, there is some moisture and perhaps some evidence of mold in your home. What do you do at that point? Well, in the report, there's going to be some recommendations on how to address or fix those issues. Now, typically that means remediation. Now, that's the industry term for let's remove the mold and bacteria. That's what that means. Typically, that is involved in some fashion. Now, if you're a renter, what do? You don't own the property, but you've paid an inspector to come out. They have this report to you, and they say this is what needs to be done. Well, at that point, what you do is send that report to your landlord, because that now is an official notice from a certified professional saying something needs to be done to the property. And as a little caveat, because it is in California, then you should be able to get a rent credit from your landlord for what you pay the inspector to do, because they found something that the landlord now has to fix. And they just can't simply dismiss the inspection because California law, Senate Bill 655, that was passed in the fall of 2015 and went into effect in January of 2016, requires property owners to maintain their properties free of dampness and mold. Now, dampness, of course, leads to mold and bacteria growth, mold being defined as microorganisms or fungi in the bill itself. And so they sort of have to do what the report says. Now, what if it appears they're not going to do anything about that for whatever reason? Or they try to send out their own guy to check it out and say, well, we didn't see anything and we didn't find anything, so we're not going to do anything. Well, they can't just walk away from it that way because you have, again, a report from a certified professional. Well, at that point, you may need a different kind of assistance as a renter. Now, I have a PDF I can send you that will assist you in this situation. Now, if you're a homeowner, let's say you have an insurance claim that you may possibly be able to file. And sometimes the insurance may want to cover it, sometimes not. And depending on the situation, they still may be required to cover it, but still try to deny coverage. The PDF that I send you can also help you in that situation. And it also can even relate to maybe there was a vendor that did work there in that area where the leak may be in the past year or even up to possibly 4 years that they could still be liable for. So these are things to take note of that you can still be assisted by in the PDF that I send you. All you got to do is put your email address in the link below. I'll send it out to you ASAP, and then that gives you the resources to address both of these issues that you may be facing. Because I want to make sure that people have what they need to address their situations, as I do hate injustices to be done. Thank you for tuning in. We have more videos that I think are available or upcoming soon, and thank you for listening.